Back in the day, the original arcade version of Killer Instinct was one of the most badass fighting games you could ever play. It had an awesome visual style, really fun combat, and a really awesome soundtrack. And like most fighting games, it got ported to other consoles, and in this case it got ported to the Super Nintendo. And in case you never were aware, the Super Nintendo was not nearly powerful enough to run the arcade-perfect version of Killer Instinct. So like most ported fighting games to the system, it's slightly scaled down. The biggest difference you'll see right off the bat is visuals. The game is not nearly visually as impressive. You don't have the really nice looking character models anymore. They're kind of compressed and a lot of frames are missing. And the stages also suffer a drastic visual decrease. And the cool versus introductions that you get, they're not there either. But you know what, we can't keep just ragging on it as a comparison. Enough with the comparing visuals. For the Super Nintendo, it's not really a bad looking fighting game though. It gets the job done and you're still playing Killer Instinct. Because control-wise and gameplay-wise, this is still fairly accurate. Though things might seem a little different and distances might be a little off due to size differences and graphic differences. Control-wise, the game is comfortable and fun to play. However, be aware that this does not play like your traditional 2D fighter of the time. It's very combo-heavy, and there's it's a very different fighting system. You'll notice that I'm missing a lot of my combos, and that's just mainly because of the mistakes I make. Though it's not an arcade machine, the Super Nintendo controller does the job playing this game pretty well. Another neat feature that was interesting in Killer Instinct in the arcade that's also in the Super Nintendo version is the use of combo breakers. It basically plays out like rock, paper, scissors. If you can figure out the combo pattern your opponent is unleashing on you, you can use a respective input with the right amount of strength on the punch or kick that you're using for your breaker move, and you can break out of the combo. This is really helpful, especially since combos are such a big part of this game. Now, like I said before, the music in Killer Instinct is absolutely awesome. Very original, and very hard to forget. The Super Nintendo versions are very compressed and definitely not as high quality as the arcade version, but they still do the job, and the music for Super Nintendo music still is pretty decent. The character roster is also something that needs to be mentioned about Killer Instinct. It's a very unusual cast of characters, but it's pretty neat at the same time. You've got an ice alien, a guy who's made of fire, you've got a spy chick who's trying to bring down the company that's the main villains of the game, you've got this clunky-ass robot, and, of course, you've got a dinosaur. The cast is neat, and each one has their own unique moveset that makes each one of them fairly fun to play with. It's not an arcade-perfect port of this game, but it's still pretty fun, and for Super Nintendo, it's a good fighting game to have. Now, I suggest if you can possibly do it, go try the arcade version of Killer Instinct, because I love it. But if you want to settle for something slightly cheaper, or you just can't find an arcade version of it, then go ahead and play the Super Nintendo version. I strongly suggest you play Killer Instinct at some point if you like a fighting game that's fun and different.